We're privileged to have with us this morning a lay speaker from our church. She not only is a lay speaker and goes around to a lot of other churches, she monitors and coordinates the whole F.U.E.L program, and everybody should know by now what F.U.E.L means in Montgomery County. And this is the lady that started it. And it's not only grown in Montgomery County, I think it's grown into Kentucky, it's grown into other parts of Tennessee. And she can tell you how many churches that she's gotten to work for F.U.E.L and work for the kids and give them food. Denise has also, last weekend, she just picked up a project, or helped pick up a project for hamburgers for Harry, for a friend of hers at work that had trouble. Denise is always trying to find some way to help people. And in the meantime, she did get to be certified as a lay speaker. She's here to speak this morning. She does a great job wherever she goes, and it sure is our privilege to have Denise Skidmore with us this morning.
That doesn't make me more nervous, you know. I'm always nervous in front of my home church, so you'll have to forgive me. I know that you knew me, some of you knew me before I found my way to Christ, and I was quite the perfect sinner at that time, so I hope that when you look upon me now, you look upon me a little bit differently. Over the years, I've changed. The reading today is going to be from Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. And before I go forward, I want to say to the Ligons, it is absolutely wonderful to see you. I missed you. You are a part of this church. You always will be. And to have you away, there's been an empty spot. We'll be so glad to have you back in here on your regular pew every Sunday. It'll be a great blessing for this church to have you back. So we're reading from Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, and he's talking about the ends of time. Of course, that means the second coming of Jesus. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge. These are the words of God for the people of God. Praise be to God. Your name is written in the book. The book. You know, I have to tell you, my family, maybe some of you know, I claim my heritage to be Italian because that's what most of me is. But some rogue people happened into the lives of the Italians, and they're not Italian. My great-grandfather is Scottish, and I knew him as, of all things, Icky. That was his nickname growing up, Icky. Kind of like Skip or Chip, some of the other names you've heard. His nickname was Icky. Now, with a nickname like Icky, that's quite a name to live up to. You can imagine the grief he took from childhood to adulthood with a name like Icky. But it was a lot easier to say than his real name, Ichabod Comstock McCrary. Okay, we'll just call you Icky. His brother's nickname was Red, and so on and so forth. Although they had God-given names or birth names, they had nicknames. I had many nicknames as a child. I was a child with 6 siblings, and still to this day, when my mother tries to talk to one of us, she has to run through the whole list of names to get my name out, which is okay. I asked her one time, "Do you remember my birth?" She said, "No." "Mom, you don't remember the day I was born?" "No, Denise, you were the 6th one. I really don't remember that. I get them all mixed up." But I'm just as special to her as are any of them. My oldest sister is Marcia, my next sister Janine, and my 3rd sister Chris. My sister Janine's middle name is Marie. She's the middle daughter of the upper 3. And my sister Marcy, the oldest one, her middle name is Louise. Now, as time went by, my mom and dad kind of discussed who was going to name what child. The first child, they agreed. My mom picked the first name. My dad picked the middle name. The next child, they reversed it. And the third child came around, and they kind of argued over if they were going to use the same theory. And somehow, my sister Chris ended up with the same middle name as my sister Marcy. But they didn't realize it for 5 years till she went to school. Was the name really all that important? It wasn't a family name. It was the name Louise, and it was a woman that my mother had worked with for years, and they just liked it, so they named her that. When it came time to name me, it was my father's name. My father enjoyed libations to no end when he was young, and so when it came time to name me and they were standing in the hallway with the clerk, he said, "I'm going to name her Roxanne." And my mother looked at him and said, "You're not naming her after the dog." So every once in a while, my dad still calls me Roxy, just joking, and I just kind of laugh with him. Okay, call me Roxy. But as it turned out, my mother got the last laugh because the two last children, myself and my brother, have my mother's initials exactly. And she planned it that way. For no other reason than she felt like for a 6th and 7th child, she deserved just a little bit of something, just a little bit. The nurse said to her, "You know, Mrs. Davis, your 8th child's free. You won't have to pay for that delivery." My dad said, "There's not going to be an 8th one, I promise you." I think they ran out of names, I'm not sure. But as time goes on, I've seen a lot of people name their children based on family names. My sister-in-law's husband's name is Henry Julius Minke. His father's name is Julius Henry Minke. His grandfather's name is Henry Julius Minke, and this goes back for 7 generations where it's either Henry Julius Minke or Julius Henry Minke. When the first grandson came, they said, "We're not picking either of those names." Because what happened was, if Henry didn't like the name Henry, he went by Julius. And if Julius didn't like the name Henry, so none of them were really called by their name. For a long time in my life, early in my life, my name is Denise. That's my first name. I wasn't called Denise. I was called Baby and Dolly and Birdie and many other names that I don't care to discuss right here. But a lot of people didn't call me Denise. And to this day, there are a whole group of people in Omaha, Nebraska that call me Niecy. That's all they've ever known me by. They probably think that's really my first name. But my parents didn't name me that. They named me, or my mother did, Denise. Now, what's in a name? Jody just talked about, as we pick a child's name, sometimes we pick it based on heritage. Some of us turn to the Bible. I've met some children named Noah who like to play in the water. However, I don't know if they'll ever be able to build an ark. I don't know that they're going to listen to God as closely as Noah did or to follow him that closely, but it's a nice name. And when you think of the name Noah, you automatically go back to the ark. Unless you know a Noah like some of the Noahs I know, who you just kind of shake your head and wait to see him grow up. There are a lot of different ways to name a child, and like Jody said, we hope that we will live up to our names. Somewhere, I think, in all of our lives, you go seeking the meaning of your name. You go look in a baby book name. Maybe it's you're naming your first child and you find your name. My name is a Greek name for wine goddess. I don't really care to live up to my name. I can't see myself with the big things hanging off my shoulders and bottles of wine, and I just can't see myself that way. But that's the meaning of my name. So as we name our children, we kind of pick a name that we want to be special, something of great meaning to us, something that we want them to live up to. When it came time to name my daughter Katie, I knew that I wanted her named Katie. I didn't want her called Kate. I didn't want her named Kay. I wanted her to be Katie. So we spelled her name C-A-D-E-Y. Now, I had thought about naming her the initials K-D after my father, Ken Davis, but I thought all of her life people will ask her, what does K-D stand for? And when she said Ken Davis, here she is, a young girl, it wasn't going to go over real well. So we spelled it C-A-D-E-Y. To this day, she doesn't like her name. She can't find it on a keychain, it's hard to spell, people call her by other names. But to me, She's my Katie, and she always will be. And that name is very unique. I'm starting to see more people with that name. I don't think I created that name. It just was one that I chose. I hadn't seen it anywhere. But she has lived up to her name. She has a unique personality, very individual, very intelligent. She can hold up that name. She can carry that name. When you have a unique name like Icky, you have to carry that name, like Skip. I'm sure Skip took a lot of grief as a child over his nickname. Well, imagine carrying a name like Jesus from birth. You carry it with you, and everybody knows that your mother was the woman who got pregnant before she was married, and yet you're called the Savior. Everybody knows that we expect you to save us from all sin and to deliver us into the future, because that's what they're telling us you're going to do. And here you are, a child making mud pies and eating them. I just don't know if that's the guy I want saving me. But he still carried the name Jesus. His father had his name selected before he was born, had a mission for him to perform, and knew what he was going to do, what he expected of him. However, remember, Jesus was born into a natural world, the same world that we're born into. He had the same temptations that we have. He had the same opportunities that we have. He could have chosen any path, but he knew what his Father expected of him. He expected him to become our Savior. That doesn't mean that he had to walk the perfectly straight line. That doesn't mean that when temptations came along, he couldn't have given in slightly to them, but he chose not to. He chose to live up to his name. As Bill said, I stay really, really busy. I spent the first 40 years of my life serving myself, and I didn't do a very good job. I was on the road to self-destruction most of the years. And as I met Jesus on the walk to Emmaus, and as my church family here at Hilldale encouraged me to become closer to Christ, I changed who I was. I changed who I was and where I was going. And one of the things that I tell people is when I die, I don't want people to remember me as the lady down the street who didn't have a perfect yard, or the lady down the street who always had cars in the driveway, or the lady down the street who didn't keep her lawn mowed, or the woman down the street whose child did this. This is what I want them to remember me as: the lady down the street who never stopped giving. That's the name that I'm living up to for myself. Recently, I went back to college, and it's quite a task when you're, well, I almost told my age. I'm over 49, let's put it that way. When you go back to college at the age of 50, and to be in there with 19-year-old kids who are Facebooking and texting, and I just am trying to grasp what's happening in this classroom. I'm doing this because my father doesn't have a child with a college degree out of 7 children. I'm going to be taking out student loans just like other children. I'm struggling with time management just like other students. I'm working through all of this just like other students, but I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for my father. And the thrill that he gets when he calls me and says, "What'd you get on this one?" Because he knows when I finish my classes, and he wants to hear my grades even at the age of 50. He wants me to do this, and he never asked me. When I called him and I said, "Dad, I'm going back to college," and he said, "For what?" "A degree." "That's what for?" "Why? What are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to finish it." "Really?" "Yes, I'm going to finish it." It changed him at that moment. It wasn't about me, it's about him. I knew then that something that he had always wanted to take place was going to take place in his life. I was going to live up to something that my father had always wanted. That's what I live my life for now with Jesus. I live my life to do what he has always wanted me to do, to feed his children, to care for others, to love others, to be kind and thoughtful of others, and to remember that I'm not on this earth to serve me. I'm not going to be any good at that because I'm not ever going to make myself happy. I'm not ever going to be real with myself. I'm always going to want more. I'm always going to think I need more. I'm always going to think I deserve more. But for others in need, it's much easier to serve. In the Bible, there are several meanings for the word, or several statements or meanings for the word Jesus. In Revelations chapter 1, verse 5, he's known as the faithful witness. In 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 12, he's known as the gentle whisperer. I don't know if you've ever watched a baby, but when you gently whisper in their ear, the whole world stops for them and they lean into you and they want to hear what you say. If we keep that childlike relationship with Christ and with God and with the Holy Trinity, our ear will always be open to that gentle whisperer who nudges us to do the things that are right and kind. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, he's the great I am. I am God. I am the living word. I am. There's other words that you've heard from the early years of Jesus when he was, when the Jews were watching him, and they named him Jewish names like Jehovah Jireh, which means the one who provides, or the great provider. And in looking at these names, I know that when I cry out in times of pain, I cry out the name of Jesus. I cry out to God. I no longer cry out to my mother. It used to be as a child I would cry to my mom. You know, funny thing is, I never blamed her for anything that happened in my life when I was a child. I always just looked to her for comfort. But somehow as we get older, we tend to blame God for everything that happens in our life. Why don't you love me anymore? What have I done to you that's so bad that you would punish me by making me lose my job? That you would punish me by making me have this accident? That you would Why do we think of him like that when in reality that's not him at all? He doesn't create these things. He doesn't cause these things. And we need to cry out to him the way we cry out to our parents as children to help us and to love us and to guide us and to keep us close to him and up against his breast, as the song says. Gently and peacefully hold me and keep me close to you. I need you. As adults, we tend to think that we don't need anyone. We can do it. We'll be all right. We'll pay whatever damages were done. We'll take care of, whatever it is. But in reality, we can't do that. We can't fix it for each other. Only God can do that through the love that he offers and the forgiveness that he offers. And he brought his son Jesus to do that for us. The name Jesus means so much more than Son of God. As I stated, there's many words used to describe him, but the most important words are Father, Provider, Lover. He's Comforter. He's all of these things that we dream of, that we seek inside of ourselves, and he gives it to us with no cost. Today, as you leave the church, you're going to walk away and you're going to smile about some of the things that I've said, and you'll laugh about Icky. Every time I hear somebody say Icky, it makes me laugh, thinking of my great-grandfather walking around the earth with a name like Icky. Ichabod Comstock McCrary. I would have thought they could have thought of another name for him. But I want you to think about the many names of Jesus and where you find him in your life and why you would cry out to him. He put us here for a reason. He gave us a name. His children, we're his children. We're God's children, just like Jesus. Not one of us is any different. We have the ability to save people from death by going out and being a disciple. We have the ability to love and provide, just like Jesus. All of those gifts are given to us as they were given to him. And it's our responsibility to live up to our names.